Hey guys, it's Camille here. I am so sad that I could not be with you all in person, but I just wanted to say thank you, number one, for all of your sweet messages that you sent me, and thank you for all of the questions. I have a list of all of your questions here, and I want to make sure that I can answer all of them for you. So sit down, get comfortable, and stay tuned to see my answers to all of your fun questions. So, first question is from Sky. Sky wants to know, could all people become scientists if they tried? If there were one dream you had as a scientist, what would it be? And how did you decide to become a scientist? Whoa, that's a lot of questions. I definitely think all people could become scientists if they tried. The most important thing is that that's what you really like to do and what you love. I would never want someone to just try to be a scientist just because I am. You have to love it. If there were one dream I had as a scientist, what would it be? I think to make some kind of new creation that would change the world, whether or not it would be, a cure to the virus that we're all facing right now, or a cure to cancer. Those kind of things that really impact a huge amount of people is what I would dream of as a scientist. Something that could change someone's life. How did I decide to become a scientist? My entire life I loved science. So I used to go outside and pick up frogs and snakes and bugs and all of those things outside and play in the dirt when I was a kid, and I loved it. And I loved cooking and baking, and I realized that all of those things were science. And so when I decided what I wanted to do for my job, it was definitely science. It was just what kind of science I wanted to study, and there's so many. So even if you think you don't like a particular piece of science, there's, I'm sure, something else that would be right for you if that was a career that you're looking to do. Okay, Zoha asks me, if you met me, what would be your first question? What was it like performing in front of hundreds of people? Do you have a sibling? What is your hobby? What is your favorite color? Okay, first question. If I met you, what would be my first question? I would ask you how many stones you think are in my crown. How many stones do you think are in my crown? The answer is 792. What was it like performing in front of hundreds of people? It was more like thousands. The arena we were in had 10,000 people in it, and it was not super scary because it was actually dark, so I only could see like right in front of me, and I had lights on me, so I could only kind of see the first few rows of people, so I didn't remember there were thousands of people. I tried to ignore that. What is my hobby? So like, what are my hobbies that I like to do? Definitely cooking and baking. I said I loved that, and it's probably my favorite thing to do in my free time. I love cooking. It's a good day when I get to make a bunch of food. My favorite thing. And playing with my cats. What is my favorite color? I think my favorite color is blue right now. My evening gown at Miss America was blue, and it's a good color. Rosita asks me, what was my dream job when I was younger? Have I created any experiments on my own? I had a lot of dream jobs when I was younger. I started out wanting to be a chef, and then I thought maybe I'd be a food scientist, and then I wanted to be a marine biologist, and then I wanted to be a meteorologist, and then I wanted to be an engineer, and now I'm in pharmacy school. So there's been so many different things that I've wanted to do. I didn't have like one specific job that I wanted to do my whole life. And so I've kind of progressed through that. And it's okay to change your mind. Have I created any experiments on my own? I haven't really created anything on my own. I did some research in college, and that's probably the best example of an experiment that I created. So sometimes when you're trying to solve a problem, you have to basically come up with your own way to solve that problem. But a lot of the experiments that you might see me do on stage or in videos are typically things that people have done before, and then I kind of adapt them to my situation, which is totally cool. Just make sure you give credit. Pre-show wants to know, what are some current things that you are working toward? How do you balance your education with pageants? I'm currently working toward getting my Doctor of Pharmacy. I'm 1 year into my program. It's 4 years in total, and so I still have 3 more years to go. And I don't balance that with being Miss America. Great, I'm really grateful for that because I don't think that I could. This is a full-time job, so just like your parents or your older brothers and sisters go to work every day, I am Miss America full-time every day. So I take time off from my education to do this, and then I will go back later. I'm glad I would not be able to do both at once. I think it's really important to focus on one thing and not stretch yourself too thin, because when you start to do that, I think that you don't end up doing any of those things well. But that's just me. Serena wants to know, how and when were you introduced to pageants? What are your plans after a new Miss America is chosen in 2021? I started competing when I was 14, and I did a couple pageants per se that were really focused on learning how to speak in front of people. I was not necessarily an outgoing kid. I wasn't really shy, but I definitely was not comfortable in front of groups. So it taught me a lot about doing that at a young age. And then I started to learn how to do public speaking, and I got a lot out of it. I learned how to interview. I got good jobs going into college. It was great. I never thought I would compete for Miss America though, and this was kind of like a crazy decision back last year in 2019. And I'm glad that I did it. And what am I doing after Miss America in 2021? The first thing is I'm going back to school. So I said I had 3 more years of my graduate program for pharmacy left, and that will be my number one thing to do when I'm done. And then get back to not traveling as much as I have been, but of course not right now. I've been at home. I'm excited to kind of go back into the normalcy though. So there's positives and negatives to everything. Anjali wants to know, do you have any advice for girls on how to manage pageants, school, and extracurriculars? What inspired you to do a science experiment for Miss America? I would say that this kind of goes back to what I was saying before in terms of picking a couple things. Don't overwhelm yourself, or at least in my opinion, I don't do well when I'm overwhelmed. I kind of shut down. And I think some people try to do too much. So pick a couple things. If you don't like them, move away and pick something else. But don't try to do so many things at one time. Maybe pick one extracurricular that you want to work on. Focus on your academics, and then maybe if you wanted to be a title holder, you could do that too. But make sure that you can do what you are doing to the fullest of your ability and give yourself enough time to do that. What inspired me to perform a science experiment? Well, couple things. The talent portion. Normally women dance or sing or play an instrument or twirl a baton, and I literally can't do any of those things. So I didn't have much of an option to do those. And so I was trying to figure out what would represent who I am as a person, and so I love science, so I chose that. Someone had done it before in 2015, and so I talked to her, and she really mentored me in how to perform this in a way that was entertaining, because I think more than anything, just to entertain people for 90 seconds, especially without music, that's a talent. So it was a lot of different things that combined, but I'm so glad that I did it because I think it gave me an advantage because I stood out from the group, and that's always important. It's always important to just be unique and be yourself, because if I had just done what everyone else had done, I definitely would not have won. Okay, more questions on the back of this page. Maya wants to know, do I have any idols who encouraged me to pursue a science career? Why do you think it's important to why is it important to encourage girls to pursue STEM careers? I didn't have a particular idol who encouraged me, but I definitely had really good teachers that helped me through science. I also had really cool parents that always sent me to science camp, and so I would do that during the summer, and they always let me kind of explore, and I think it's important that if you're curious that you express that to your family. Say, hey, this is what I want to do, and ask for their support, and hopefully you'll get that. I think that was a big thing for me. I think it's so important for girls to pursue STEM careers because, we talk a lot about diversity, and it's so important to have different groups of people represented. We have different experiences, we have different thought processes. So if we're only having, a lot of boys doing science, maybe there's some girls that could really offer some amazing things. And it's important that we have our voices heard in that, and that we know that we have the opportunity to make change in that. And so it's so important that we have just the same opportunities as anyone else. Anjali also wants to know, do you have any advice for young girls that aspire to work in the STEM field in the future? I think my biggest piece of advice in that is to not assume that just because you're a woman in science or in STEM that you won't have the same opportunities. go toward that like there are no barriers and put your skills and experience first. I think a lot of us, when we look at women in STEM, we might feel like we don't have the same opportunities. And if we go in with that mindset, then sometimes we set ourselves up to feel like that. So go in, headstrong, know that you have the experience and ability to do those things, and it will, I think, change the entire way that you approach that situation. Anonymous question. What are some challenges you faced as a woman in STEM? How did you overcome them? I'm really lucky that I haven't faced a lot of challenges as a woman in STEM. I will say I had a high school teacher, I got a question right in my chemistry class, and he looked at me and he was like, oh, even a blind squirrel gets a nut sometimes, like, that it just was like a lucky thing that I happened to get that question right. And I don't think he would have said that to like the other boys in my class, and that was really frustrating, and I think that continuously stuck with me, that it was like, hey, you know what, like, I have just as much knowledge as everyone else, and don't just belittle me because of my gender. But that was really the only time that I felt that way. And so I think that you overcome them with your own confidence in yourself, that people might not believe you, people might not think that you're good enough, but if you know that you are, then you should really be able to push past those people and teach them something. It's always good to be able to prove people wrong.